She was just a grandmother, until three bikers tried to intimidate her. "Make sure the old lady gets the message." Those were the last words Michael the Reaper Kendrick said before sending three Sons of Mayhem bikers to intimidate what looked like an easy target, a silver-haired grandmother selected for jury duty in his upcoming trial. But in the shadows of a Boston courthouse parking garage, those men were about to learn that looks can be dangerously deceiving. 30 seconds later, three of New England's most feared gang members were unconscious on the concrete, and the sweet-looking 68-year-old woman in the cardigan was calmly calling 911. That woman was Victoria Garrison, and before she was a juror, she was Phantom 5, a decorated Special Forces operative with 2 decades of covert ops experience, the kind of person who knows exactly how to handle threats. What came next would unravel a network of corrupt judges and law enforcement, exposing the darkest corners of New England's underworld, and all of it started with a grandmother quietly observing in the back row. Now, before we dive into what happened next, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from, because tomorrow's story will blow your mind even more. That morning, Victoria walked into the courthouse like any other juror, modest shoes, tidy hair, and a gentle smile perfected through years of blending in. No one, not even the security guard, could have guessed she'd once led classified missions in regions the CIA still won't name. As jury selection began, she sat silently, taking notes, not on the case, but on the people, who flinched at certain names, who tried too hard to stay invisible, who had eyes on the exits. She played the part of a retired librarian flawlessly, and by day's end, she was one of the 12 selected for the Sons of Mayhem trial, a case involving weapons, drugs, and violence across the East Coast. But later that night, things took a turn. In the dim light of the garage, Victoria heard the growl of 3 engines. Frost, Ice, Blizzard. Their names said it all. They thought they were about to scare a harmless old lady. "Hey, Grandma!" one barked. "We need to talk about that trial." Victoria fumbled her keys, feigning confusion. "Oh dear, I don't think I'm supposed to discuss." "This ain't about talking," Frost snapped, stepping forward. That's when everything changed. In a flash, Victoria's stance shifted. Her years of training kicked in. A swift strike to Frost's throat silenced him. Ice tried to pull a weapon. Victoria sent him airborne with a clean hip throw. The crack of his head on the concrete echoed. Blizzard came in with a knife, but she disarmed him in one fluid motion. Less than 30 seconds. 3 gangsters, down cold. Victoria casually dialed 911. Yes, 3 men tried to intimidate a juror. They're alive. Barely. Then she made a second call, this time to someone who hadn't heard from her in years. "Dr. Shepard, it's Victoria. Remember that Sons of Mayhem case?" Things just escalated. Meanwhile, across town at a sleek private club, Michael Kendrick was sipping whiskey, completely unaware that his quiet attempt to influence the jury had just detonated his entire operation. And it all started with a woman no one saw coming. The plan had blown up in Kendrick's face. But what he didn't know yet was that the woman he'd tried to scare into silence was about to become his worst nightmare. Sirens howled in the distance as Victoria Garrison sat calmly on the hood of her car, watching the battered bikers begin to stir. Her strikes had been deliberate, enough to drop them, but not enough to kill. Evidence, after all, is always better when it can speak. Detective Patrick Murphy was the first to arrive, followed closely by a swarm of patrol cars. He took in the scene with raised brows. "Mrs. Garrison, are you all right?" "Oh, yes, dear," she replied with a polite smile, though these young men might need a bit of medical help. "Had a small accident while discussing jury duties with me." Murphy's eyes locked on the gang patches. This wasn't a random attack. It was the opening shot in something much bigger. What the Sons of Mayhem didn't know was that this single failed intimidation would start a chain reaction that could bring their empire crashing down. Victoria hadn't spent 2 decades in special forces without learning how to spot the tip of a much larger operation. As forensics teams captured the scene and paramedics tended to the bikers, Victoria spotted someone in the shadows, FBI agent Daniel Carson. She'd noticed him earlier during jury selection. Too much interest, too much presence. This wasn't just a gang trial anymore. Something far deeper was in motion. Meanwhile, across town in the steel-clad office of the Sons of Mayhem, Michael the Reaper Kendrick slammed his fist into the table, shaking every glass around it. The message was clear. His men had failed, and badly. "Let me get this straight," he growled. "3 of our guys, taken out by a grandma, in our city?" His enforcer, Benjamin Titanium Wallace, stayed silent, watching carefully. The messenger, a young prospect, swallowed hard. "They're in custody, boss, charged with jury tampering and assault. But there's more. Feds showed up way too fast." Kendrick's jaw tightened. This wasn't just bad optics, it was exposure. Real exposure. "Get Arctic and Glacier on alert," he barked at Wallace, "and find out everything about this woman. I want to know who she really is." Back at Boston Police Headquarters, Victoria sipped tea in an interview room like she was at book club. Detective Murphy reviewed her statement while Agent Carson leaned against the wall, studying her every move. "The young men were rather insistent about discussing the trial," she said calmly. "I simply defended myself. Basic self-defense techniques." Murphy shot Carson a look. They'd seen the injuries. Nothing about what happened was basic. "Mrs. Garrison," Carson said carefully, "we're concerned about your safety. The Sons of Mayhem don't take humiliation lightly." Her smile held something colder now, something earned over decades in the field. "How thoughtful of you, Agent Carson, though I don't recall anyone mentioning FBI involvement in a simple assault." The room chilled. "How did you—" "The same way I noticed your colleague photographing potential jurors this morning and the 3 agents watching from the garage. Would you like to drop the act now and talk about what this really is?" Before Carson could respond, a court clerk entered holding a thick file. "Detective, you'll want to see this. 7 cases, 1 year, all involving jury selections with strange patterns, and 1 judge's name on every file, Rothschild, the same judge handling the current trial." Victoria sent a quick message to a secure number. "Peace is moving. Need background on Rothschild." The reply came instantly. "Meeting tonight. Same place. Bring the Fed, if he's clean." Meanwhile, at Massachusetts General Hospital, the 3 bikers lay under police guard. Frost Johnson was giving his version of events when Benjamin Wallace entered, flashing a cold smile. "I'm their lawyer," he said flatly. "I need a word. Alone." The officer hesitated, then stepped out. Wallace's face changed the moment the door closed. "Tell me what really happened." Frost winced. "She wasn't normal, man. Moved like a ghost. 1 second she's a granny, next I'm on the floor seeing stars." "Did she say anything?" "No. Played it cool, but—" Frost hesitated. When the cops came, she made a call. Mentioned someone named Shepard. Wallace's eyes narrowed. He turned away, already dialing his phone. "Boss, we've got a problem." Back at Boston Police Headquarters, Detective Murphy was managing the fallout when Judge Rothschild himself marched in, oozing authority and barely concealed fury. "Detective," he barked, "I understand you're holding 3 men on extremely thin charges. I'm here to order their immediate release." Murphy stood firm. "With respect, Your Honor, we have clear evidence of jury intimidation." "What you have," Rothschild snapped, "is an old woman's questionable story and a waste of public resources. They're being released." That's when Victoria Garrison, who had quietly observed the exchange, finally spoke. "How interesting that you're so concerned about these particular defendants, Your Honor. One might even suspect a pattern." The judge turned, startled, his face tightening. But before he could respond, Agent Carson stepped forward. "Judge Rothschild, I'm Agent Carson with the FBI. Perhaps we should take this outside." The judge's face shifted through rage, panic, and then a strained calm. "That won't be necessary," he muttered. "I'll handle this through proper channels." He spun on his heel and exited, already dialing his phone. Murphy turned to Carson, still processing. "What just happened?" Victoria answered instead. "Judge Rothschild just showed his hand, and now we wait for the next move." Almost on cue, Laura Winters, flushed and breathless, burst in. "Detective, you need to see this. Someone just firebombed Mrs. Garrison's car. Murphy and Carson bolted for the garage. Victoria didn't move. She pulled out her phone, calm as ever. "Dr. Shepard, it's time. Bring the files." Meanwhile, across Boston. The sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows as phone calls were made, hard drives accessed, and hidden networks activated. One grandmother had tugged a thread, and an entire web of corruption was starting to unravel. At the Steel Horse Bar, Michael, the Reaper, Kendrick, stared at the first full file on Victoria Garrison. His face darkened with every line he read. "Military history sealed, special forces, no wonder." He looked up angry. Who the hell did we just declare war on? An hour later, in a warehouse no one was supposed to find, the old waterfront building looked abandoned, peeling paint, boarded windows, but beneath the surface was something else entirely. Hidden surveillance, encrypted feeds, motion detectors. Victoria approached on foot, clocking the poorly disguised surveillance van nearby. Inside, Dr. Thomas Shepard monitored his screens. Gray-haired, soft-spoken, but razor-sharp. He'd hunted transnational cartels for decades. When Victoria entered, he didn't look up. "They took the bait," she said, dropping into a chair. Rothschild exposed himself, right on schedule. Shepard tapped his keyboard, pulling up the judge's dossier. Appointed 15 years ago. Every major Sons of Mayhem case has landed on his desk. Conviction rate? 0. "Subtle," Victoria said, voice laced with sarcasm. "And Agent Carson?" she asked. "Clean," Shepard confirmed. "One of the only ones Kendrick couldn't buy. That's why he's here." A screen blinked, a motion alert. Speaking of which, the door creaked open. Agent Carson stepped in, eyes scanning the setup. Interesting choice for a base of operations. More subtle than a van with a fake utility logo, Victoria smirked. He said nothing, just walked toward the monitors. "So this is what happens to 20 years of Special Forces intel work? You go freelance?" "Not freelance," Shepard replied. "Just unofficial. Some truths can't live inside compromised systems." Carson's eyes narrowed as he read through the files. "This isn't just a gang case." "No," Victoria said. "The Sons of Mayhem are the muscle. The real threat is what's behind them." At the clubhouse, things were heating up. Benjamin Wallace swept the bar with Arctic and Glacier, scanning for bugs. "Got something?" Arctic called out, waving a signal detector. Wallace leaned in. Standard FBI transmitter. "They've been listening," he muttered. Upstairs, Kendrick was meeting with none other than Judge Rothschild. The two men were tense, the air thick with panic. "This is falling apart," Rothschild hissed. "That woman's not some random old lady. She's military, high level." Kendrick's fist slammed into the table. "Then we hit back. Hard. They tried to intimidate one woman. Now their entire empire is crumbling." "Everyone calm down," Kendrick growled. "One woman doesn't bring down everything we've built." "You don't get it," Wallace replied, pale. "I looked into her record. Most of it's classified. People like that don't just end up on jury duty by chance." Before Kendrick could respond, Glacier burst in with a phone. "Boss, it's Romano. Says it's urgent." Anthony Romano, Kendrick's go-to man for laundering money, rarely made direct calls. Kendrick answered, and his face darkened with every word. "How many accounts?" "No. Freeze everything. No transfers." He hung up, turning to Rothschild. "Every front we've got, every shell company is under investigation." Someone just triggered the alarm. Back at the warehouse, Shepard brought up a digital spiderweb of corruption on a wall of screens. "The Sons of Mayhem are just the tip," he explained. "Beneath them is a deep network of dirty officials, judges, and business elites. They've turned Boston into a machine. Kendrick is just the face." "And the real power stays hidden," Victoria added. Agent Carson studied the connections. "But why now? If you had all this, why wait?" "We didn't have enough," Shepard said. "The judges blocked every warrant. The cops buried evidence. We needed them to slip, publicly." "A catalyst," Victoria said. "Something that would force them to move. Like threatening the wrong juror." Carson's eyes widened. "You wanted them to target you." Victoria gave a grim nod. They have a pattern. Intimidate early. Take control. We knew it would happen. So what now? Now? Shepard gestured to his monitors. Now we watch them fall apart. New alerts flashed across the screens. Multiple phones buzzed. What is it? Carson demanded. Shepard's fingers flew. Citywide police calls. Sons of Mayhem members are hitting homes of judges, prosecutors. They're trying to send a message. They're going after anyone who might testify, Victoria said, standing. Carson's voice dropped. Jennifer Ashworth's address is on this list. The lead prosecutor? Shepard snapped. Go, I'll coordinate with Murphy. Move! Moments later, as sirens cut through the night, Victoria and Carson raced through Boston's streets. The city was on fire, figuratively and literally. The Sons of Mayhem were trying to remind everyone why they were feared. But this time, it was too late. 2 motorcycles roared up to Ashworth's quiet neighborhood, chains and bats ready. They approached the house fast, but they never made it to the door. Victoria stepped from the shadows, every trace of her grandma persona gone. You boys looking for someone? The bikers froze, then lunged. The first missed by inches. Victoria stepped in and dropped him with a single precise blow. The second got a chain around her arm, but she twisted, turned it back on him and slammed him down with brutal efficiency. Carson appeared from cover, weapon drawn. Federal agent, don't move. Victoria calmly unwound the chain from her arm. Detective Murphy will want to speak with these two. They may be more talkative than their friends. Across the city, chaos erupted. Some attacks landed, others were shut down. But everywhere they struck, the Sons of Mayhem left more evidence. More witnesses, more mistakes. The Empire was cracking. Back at the clubhouse, Kendrick's phone was blowing up. One failed hit after another, one location after the next compromised. His face turned grim. Nearby, Judge Rothschild looked sick. It's over, he whispered. This whole thing's about to collapse. He was right, because at that very moment, federal agents were raiding Anthony Romano's office. Sunrise, Boston. Romano's office swarmed. FBI teams boxed up files, servers, and decades of dirty secrets. Romano, the man who'd moved millions for the gang, sat slumped in his chair. His perfect suit looked rumpled, his nerves even worse. Agent Carson directed the evidence teams. Every document, every drive. No exceptions. He turned to Romano, whose lawyer was sweating bullets. This goes easier if you cooperate. Romano's eyes drifted to the window where Victoria Garrison stood, silent and still. She shouldn't be here, he stammered. You don't understand what they're capable of. We understand perfectly, Victoria said softly. The real question is, do you understand what happens now? Kendrick can't protect you anymore. Just then, a junior agent rushed in, holding a laptop. Sir, you need to see this. We found a hidden partition, a full second set of books. Carson leaned in, his face hardening. Offshore transfers, shell companies, names. He paused. Judges, police, council members, everyone. Romano collapsed into his seat. His lawyer leaned in urgently. Given these developments, Mr. Romano, I strongly advise— I want a deal, Romano interrupted. Full immunity, witness protection. I'll give you everything. Back at Police HQ, Detective Murphy was directing coordinated raids. The gang's own brutality had given them what they needed, probable cause for everything. Search warrants, arrests, seizures, and it was just the beginning. Judge Rothschild just signed off on emergency motions to suppress the evidence from Romano's office, a junior officer reported. Too late, Detective Murphy replied with a cold smile. Federal warrant overrides him, but it's telling. He's panicking openly now. Over Murphy's secure line, Dr. Shepard's voice came through. Satellite surveillance shows increased movement at multiple Sons of Mayhem properties. They're moving something. Evidence, Murphy muttered. They know Romano's flipped. At the Steel Horse Bar, Kendrick's core team gathered in silence. Benjamin Wallace studied the security footage of the federal raid. Nearby, Glacier paced, fists clenched. Romano's weak, Kendrick growled. He's already cracked, Wallace corrected, checking his phone. Word from our FBI contact. He's asking for witness protection. Then we hit him now, Glacier snapped. Too late, Wallace said flatly. The place is crawling with feds. But that's not the worst of it. Look at this. Bank accounts are freezing. Every shell company, every hidden stash. Kendrick's phone buzzed. Judge Rothschild. They're coming for me next, the judge stammered. Romano knows everything, the rigged juries, the buried evidence, everything. Calm down, Kendrick ordered. None of it ties to you directly. You don't understand, Rothschild shouted. They found the second books. Romano logged it all. Back at Romano's office, the once confident businessman had finally broken. Agent Carson recorded every word as Victoria listened, silently observing the scale of the operation unravel. You all focused on the bikers, Romano said. The violence, the drugs, the intimidation, but the money, that's where the real power was. And I controlled the flow. How far does it go? Carson asked. Romano leaned in. Every development project, every city contract, every department head, skimmed, laundered, paid. We didn't bribe officials. We owned them. Victoria's phone buzzed. It was Shepard. Kendrick's people are mobilizing. Multiple vehicles leaving key locations. She showed Carson the message. He didn't hesitate. I want every Sons of Mayhem property under surveillance. If they're torching evidence, we're catching it live. You don't have time, Romano warned. There's a warehouse on the waterfront. 20 years of physical records are stored there. It's the insurance policy. But if Kendrick's moving, he's burning it now. Why keep physical records? Victoria asked, though she already knew. Protection, Romano said simply. Proof. If anyone turned on us, we had leverage. But now, Kendrick's erasing everything. Carson was already calling tactical teams when Shepard's next alert came through. Multiple Sons of Mayhem members converging on Waterfront Warehouse. At the warehouse, Benjamin Wallace was in full command mode. Trucks backed up, boxes were loaded. Inside, documents were being shredded, burned, erased. Move faster, Wallace barked. Police bands are active. We've got 30 minutes, Max. A young biker ran up. Sir, police convoy en route. Multiple units. Wallace grabbed his phone. Boss, we've got company. And a lot of it. Elsewhere, Judge Rothschild wasn't waiting to be arrested. Inside his chambers, he was furiously shredding files when Victoria Garrison stepped into the doorway. Going somewhere, Your Honor? He froze. His hand drifted toward the desk drawer. Victoria was faster. You die here, or in prison, she said quietly. But either way, you're going to answer for what you've done. They'll kill me, Rothschild whispered. If I talk, they'll try, she agreed. But right now I'm the more immediate threat. The sound of sirens filled the air. Murphy and his officers entered. The judge finally gave in. The empire was collapsing. Rothschild joined Romano in telling everything. Years of corruption, decades of conspiracy, layer after layer peeling away. But the Sons of Mayhem weren't done yet. At the waterfront, Wallace had fortified the warehouse. Armed guards, shredders running non-stop. Burning drums filled the air with black smoke. No one gets these records, Wallace ordered. No matter what. Outside, the city braced for battle. Storm clouds rolled over the harbor as SWAT vans and unmarked cars surrounded the district. Victoria sat in the back of Murphy's vehicle, blueprint in hand. 3 entry points, she said. East side loading dock, front entrance, rear emergency exit to the water. They're not trying to escape. They're buying time. Murphy nodded grimly. Wallace has at least 20 men inside, all armed, all loyal. Carson arrived, his expression hard. Thermal imaging confirms it. They're destroying evidence. If we wait, it's gone. Inside the warehouse, Wallace ran operations like a war room. Men fed stacks of files into shredders. Others dumped boxes into fire drums. Rifles were loaded. Perimeters locked down. The main floor's almost cleared, Glacier reported. But we're running out of time. Then we make a stand, Wallace growled. This is our last shot. They thought she was just a juror. Then the entire network collapsed. What started as a simple act of jury intimidation turned into a global takedown of the most powerful underground organization the world had never heard of. Michael the Reaper Kendrick, leader of the Sons of Mayhem, sent 3 bikers to pressure a quiet elderly woman, Victoria Garrison. What they didn't know was that she had decades of special forces experience. In under a minute, all 3 were on the ground, and Victoria's phone call didn't just summon the police. It triggered the collapse of an empire. Behind the gang's tattoos and chaos lay something far bigger: the Network, a global organization using street gangs, corrupt officials, and legal fronts to control everything from construction and crime to international finance. Victoria teamed up with Agent Carson, Detective Murphy, and Dr. Shepard, a former intelligence analyst, unraveling layer after layer. From courtrooms to cyber vaults, the group uncovered hidden documents, bribery trails, and backup servers spread across continents. Boston was just the first domino. The Sons of Mayhem fought back violently: bombings, coordinated attacks, even blackmail, but every move gave authorities more evidence. And when Kendrick fled to Montreal, the real players emerged. Former intelligence officers, military leaders, and billionaire elites running a shadow government through the Heritage Foundation, all connected to a larger network headquartered in Geneva. Their plan? A global crisis that would lead to martial law and allow them to legally seize control. But Victoria beat them, not with high-tech gadgets, but with basic tactics they'd forgotten to guard against. Fire alarms, sprinkler systems, building blueprints, and overlooked maintenance access points. While the network prepared for cyber attacks, she walked through their front doors. They relied so heavily on being professionals that they became predictable, and their obsessive record-keeping became the evidence used to destroy them. From Boston to Geneva, hundreds of arrests were made, billions in assets seized, and the executives who once moved global markets were left stunned, taken down by a grandmother who remembered that simple still works.